Okay. John, please introduce to my class who you are.
Okay, well, my name is John Daly. I'm not the pro golfer by the same name and the same spelling, but I am known as a TV host, an author, a TV news anchor. I was a TV news investigative reporter, and I was also a newspaper reporter. So I'd say that kind of covers, and I do a lot of video production with iPhone video. So I've kind of stepped up to take on that new technology and how to use it for video production and also to create TV shows off of.
So can you tell me what your educational background is?
Sure. I graduated from Providence College with a BA in English. I did some graduate work at the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. And along the way, I've taken various things like for health and life insurance. I'm actually a certified contact tracer after once the COVID started. I think that's most of my education. The other part is just self-educating myself.
Okay. My wife is also a certified contact tracer. So
cool.
Anyway, so the reason I have you here is because I have two classes in here at one time. I have a career English class right now, and I also have a multimedia class. And I showed the multimedia class first thing this morning, some of the stuff that you have done and your demo reel. And one of the questions was, why aren't you still doing it?
Well, technically I am doing it. I'm just doing it on my own. I'm no longer like in the TV news business because the TV news business has changed drastically from what I've been used to. And they're really going after a lot younger people. And we can talk about the changes there and how that's actually, I think, hurt news in many respects. But it's kind of part of the whole change of certainly over the last 15, 20 years of what's happening. And I say it's because of demographics and also technology. So what I'm doing is I do have, like, for instance, my show Undercover Jet Setter, which is a streaming show. And that's on travel, food, wine, and golf, but it's all shot off the iPhone. So again, I can literally replace a full production company just by having my iPhone. And I can literally create a whole show. So we've created 80 different shows. So I'm kind of more off on my own as an entrepreneur than anything else. So things have changed, and it's part of the total economy and different things that are going on.
Do you think the change is for better or for worse?
I think at first they're not for better because we're working them out. And one of the things that I try to tell people from my research, and again, even though I'm no longer a journalist, I like to think I act like a journalist, and I do an awful lot of research and a lot of posting based on what I would consider real news. But I try to explain to people that there are two things that are happening. One is the demographics are changing dramatically. My age group, which is the baby boomers, we're getting a lot older. We're not working anymore. We're dying off. And as a result of it, you guys who are out there, you're becoming more of the bigger demographic that's going to control the economy and controlling politics and what's being said. So the downside to that for you guys is that people like me, we get Social Security and Medicare. And if you look at all the research, only about the majority of people on Social Security and Medicare, they only paid in about 1/3 of what they're going to use. Okay, where does the rest of it come? It's going to come from taxpayers like you who are going to have to pay for that.
Stop.
So there's
wait. I retire in 5 years, 6 years. Don't tell these guys that, because it's going to take what, 5 of them to pay for me?
Well, your retirement you've paid for. That's what you've put into. But I'm talking about Social Security and Medicare.
But that's what I said. I want my Social Security money that I've been putting in for all these years. They're not gonna get it, but I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, but they're going to pay for it.
Yes.
They're going to pay for it, and their kids are going to pay for theirs. So the first thing is we're going through a big demographic change here. The second thing is technology is changing an awful lot. So it's not only getting rid of jobs, but it's also reducing salaries. So people are having a tougher time. 15, 20 years ago, if you were a worker and you kept your nose clean, you worked hard, you didn't have a great education, you could get a roof over your head, you could get a beer or a soda in your fridge, and you could watch TV. Today, you can't do that. Today, it's very, very difficult. We keep hearing about income inequality, and about 60% of the country is actually, they're having economic troubles, and we haven't figured that out yet. And this trend has been going on for 15 or 20 years, and it's just really been hitting over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think things are beginning to change. We're going through some turmoil. You guys were not alive in the 1960s. The 1960s was very turbulent. I was a teenager then, and those were very turbulent times, and they finally worked this way out. But there's difficult times here, and there's things that are changing, and that's why all of you are probably like, wow, what's going to happen next? So I think this is just a natural phenomena. If you look back historically and you look at the sociological and economic aspects that are happening, this is actually quite normal to happen every 40, 50, 60 years or so.
So how much do you blame this on social media? Because I've talked to local reporters in Pittsburgh that do TV, one who's in her early 40s, one who's in her early 20s. The 40-year-old who went to journalism school says that she's focusing more time on social media than she is on reporting. And the younger one doesn't even understand how reporting works because all they focused on in college was dealing with social media and journalism. So do you see that being an issue now, that the focus is different than what it was before?
It is, absolutely. Now, is it the cause? I think it's more the symptom than anything else. So social media is certainly changed the way news was, or the way news used to be. And again, you guys might not have remembered this. I mean, I was a news anchor, for numerous years, and we never had to compete with social media. I never had to compete with really, the CNNs and the Fox news stations. So it's different that way. I'll give you a really good story of what had happens. A friend of mine is an author, and he lives in Las Vegas, and he called me and he says, I got to tell you the story. This is amazing. And he had just finished writing a book, and the news station wanted to do a story on him because his book just got published. And so he said the reporter came over, and he says it was just a reporter. It wasn't a reporter and a photographer the way it used to be. And he said he sat down and he set up the camera and he's put the mic on me and he's about ready to ask me a question. He said to me, he goes, okay, what do I ask you? And the friend of mine who was an author, he goes, the reporter asked me what he should be asking. And so I tried to explain to him, don't blame the reporter. Reporters today are not reporters. They're not journalists. They are recorders. And the reason why is because they have to do so much. When I might have done, as a reporter, I might have done 1 or 2 stories. Now they got to do like 4 stories, and they do it by themselves without a reporter and without an editor. They've got to do it. Then they've got to go back and turn that story around, or 4 stories around, so it gets on the newscast. And then they've got to write a newspaper story so it goes on the TV station's website. And they've reduced, like I was saying before, technology has reduced the number of jobs or the salaries of jobs. And the reason being is because, you're not getting big money coming in from advertisers to buy airtime on TV stations. Where their money's going is they're paying pennies on the dollar for Facebook ads or for Twitter ads or different social media ads. That's what's changed it drastically. So you have less revenue coming in. There's less money to pay reporters. So if you're a reporter in a TV station, you are working your butt off just to get some stuff on the air. So it's it's a drastic change, certainly over the last 10 years and definitely the last 15, 20 years.
So with that being said, you feel, and I mean, I think I know where you're going to go with this, that the demise of the newspaper is because of social media. Because in the beginning, they wanted people to look at their online site. They gave it away for free.
Mhm.
And they tried to charge people for it, and people aren't buying it because there's other places to get your news, even if it's true or not.
It's true. Absolutely. And again, I think, Facebook and all the stuff that's come out about Facebook, yeah, are they doing things that could be detrimental to people? I think they are. On the other hand, they've helped a lot of businesses reach an awful lot of new customers. I've seen it through the pandemic, different companies that I've covered here in the area, and I live in the Carolinas on the coast between Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. I've seen some companies, because they knew how to use social media and Facebook, they survived and thrived very, very well during the throes of the pandemic, the first part of the pandemic, because of social media and businesses like Facebook. So it's a double-edged sword. And I understand there are things that people don't like about Facebook. On the other hand, Facebook has helped some businesses really get out there and reach a lot of other people. But it's a different world, and we just haven't figured out what it is yet and how we go about it. Should we break up Facebook? Should they be 3 or 4 different companies? Should they just be locally, regionally? Should we have other companies that are going to be able to reach people digitally, on their phones, on their computers, whenever they want? We haven't figured that out yet. And to be honest with you, the members of Congress, the people who are our political leaders, they don't have a clue. And they've got to figure it out. And they've got to, and the other thing is not to bash them, even though I just kind of did there, but at the same time too, technology is changing. It's changing so quickly that trying to keep up, it's difficult. And so, one of the things I try to tell people is that, and for you guys out there, the most important journalist in your life, you know who that is? It's you. And you've got to learn how to be a journalist, even if you're not a journalist, because you've got to figure out what's right, what's wrong, or get some better research on what is really happening, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's not good.
So you make a comment about breaking up Facebook. Do we look at Facebook the way we used to look at the phone company before it was a big monopoly, and then we broke it down in the 1980s to AT&T, to Bell, whatever it was? Do we look at Facebook that way? Because I think one of the issues is Facebook is new. I mean, Facebook's only been around for 20 years, and yet Congress still doesn't know how to deal with them. And do you separate different parts of them, or do you just leave them go and hopefully that someone else of the same size, like a Google or whatever, can come and compete with them?
I personally think probably they're going to have to break them up. If there was a competitor to Facebook, it would have happened already. We're getting a little bit into a monopolistic age where, you would think somebody would have come up against Amazon and taken them down. But,
Walmart's tried.
Have they? No.
And Walmart's tried. They're just not able to compete the same way because of the model that Bezos is using. So when you deal with social media, and I know you do a Twitter feed where you post stuff that you are seeing happening on the news and you are reposting it. When you do that, do you put your own slant on the story, or do you just give it to them straight? Because that's one of the things we've been talking about in my other class about bias and non-bias. And in this day and age, 2021, it seems like we're getting a lot of people's opinions and not a lot of facts.
I would agree with you. And what I try to do on my pages is I try to, and if you go to the Twitter site is at John Daly TV. One of the things I do post a lot of news, but I try not to post what I would call my opinions. Yes, actually, for the most part, I don't. Yesterday I did, because I wanted to point out some media bias of a Saturday Night Live skit that was done. And I actually posted something yesterday because I thought it I thought it was really disingenuous of Saturday Night Live, owned by Comcast, a cable company, to make fun of another cable company.
Okay.
And so I did that based as somebody who's written a book on the media and media bias. But when I'm posting news, for the most part, I may post two different stories from two different publications about the same story, so people can see the differences in the take on it, or maybe a little bit different information. But for the most part, I try not to comment because I want people to see it. And I don't want my bias to get in there. So I like to put out as much as I can. The other thing is that I don't want to anger people, because there's people out there that get angry. And my whole thing is let's inform people and educate people, but let's not lose friends. Let's not lose family. And a lot of that's going on.
Yeah.
So when somebody posts something on my page that says, this is a stupid story, even though I posted it and it was something I believe had credible news value behind it, I don't usually say anything. I don't respond back, because that's usually what that person wants you to do. And I'm trying to keep the emotions down. The problem with Facebook and all social media is that, you wouldn't say that in front of a person, or you wouldn't say that out loud, but you can do it off social media because, okay, I won't get in trouble. Somebody will laugh at it. And if they get angry, who cares? They won't even know. I'm not going to get punched in the face or anything like that.
Right.
So that's the difference. That's why social media is so drastically different of anything else we've had. And it just allows a lot of people to speak their mind. And to be honest with you, the majority of people really don't know what they're talking about, because they don't read enough and they don't follow what's really going on in the news.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Saturday Night Live routine where they were making fun of Spectrum.
Right.
If they would not have used Spectrum's name in the piece and made a fictitious cable company, would you have been okay with that?
I would have. In fact, I think I would have applauded Comcast if they used Comcast on there.
Okay.
But they wouldn't, because it's their own company. And again, my problem with Comcast is that Comcast not only owns the airwaves, the internet, but they also own they own the content.
Right.
And I think that's a conflict, and I don't like that at all. So they own NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, so they're going to put it on their cable. They're going to put it in a place where it's advantageous for them, and then they're probably going to put more stuff out on your internet if you're an internet customer of theirs. So I've got a real problem with them. I think that's way too much. And I just thought it was more ironic and funny that Saturday Night Live on NBC, owned by Comcast, and you're going to make fun of a competitor because you can. And but they won't admit the things that they're doing. So that's what I thought was disingenuous about that post. And I brought that up.
Now, the other thing is, how many people out there know that NBC owns Comcast? Because where I'm at, Comcast isn't available. So we have another cable provider. So for that, I mean, I know it because of the media.
Mhm.
But do you think anybody else would read your post and see it the same way because they're not familiar with the company?
I think it might open their eyes to, okay, what's happening. But you're right. I mean, people in your area, if they have Cox Cable and they don't, what's Comcast? To me, and again, I think part of the problem is that we don't realize who's behind a lot of the companies, and to be honest with you, a lot of the lobbyists that are paying off our politicians, that are paying off the members of Congress by giving them finance money for their campaigns. And we don't understand that. And I think that that's part of the problem. And I think that we are seeing our economy being held by too few people when, the majority of us could really be. And you mentioned before about fiber, about having good internet lines. If you had it, so that it went to everybody's house, you'd have a lot of people who could start their own home businesses.
Right.
And they could, but that would hurt a lot of the established businesses or the big companies. A really good book to read is called Fiber, and it's written by Susan, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but it's a great book about how they experimented with it, and some cities and some school districts just took off as far as success rates go, because they had fiber that went directly to their homes. The kids could actually do their homework because they had access to the internet to do different things. And a lot of businesses just took off, and a lot of small businesses in areas, and I believe it was Chattanooga, Tennessee, was one of them that has complete fiber, and they control it themselves. And companies like Comcast don't control it.
Mhm.
So, so that was a lot of my, I just thought, it's kind of ironic, and I wanted to pump it out there and put it out there.
Well, I thought of something whenever you were going through the NBC, what they own. Let's look at the wonderful world of Disney.
Uh-huh.
I think they own the majority of media in the country right now, from ABC to ESPN to, they own Fox Entertainment, they own all this other stuff now. And yet they own the content, they're pushing it out, plus the amusement park, plus the merchandising, plus everything. There's a reason why they do that, because they want your dollar, no matter how they can get it from your kid, all the way up to adulthood. Do you see there being an issue with that?
Not so much as I see more the problem with the Comcast is that they're controlling the distribution, and then they're also controlling the content. So I've got a problem with that. The Disney thing, I think Disney's actually probably hurting themselves in the long run. ESPN is nowhere near as successful as it used to be. I think they're hurting. I don't think the ABC News Network or the ABC network, not News Network, is as successful. I think they're getting into streaming. I understand where you're coming from. Yes, and they do control an awful lot of it. But I think there are other content creators that are coming in that have access that can compete against it. So, and we were talking before. You were talking before about the Netflix shows. I mean, the variety of entertainment that we have now, I'm okay with. I actually think it's pretty good. Would I like to see it strung out so there was more owners and all that, and it would keep the cost down? Yeah, I would. And so far, the cost has stayed relatively good. I mean, we're seeing people, they're cutting the cable cord, they're going to streaming. So I think in some respects, I think I'm okay with that, because I think it's actually been bringing some prices down. Will that change? Will you start seeing some consolidation? You could. And when that happens, then, probably somebody needs to step in and say, okay, enough of the monopolizing.
Okay, so of you here right now, show of hands, how many of you guys have cable in your home? Okay, how many of you watch cable in your home?
Used to.
How many of you are watching streaming services like Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime? Okay. Have any of your parents decided to cut the cable and get rid of it totally and just keep the internet? I think we're going to start seeing that more and more.
Absolutely.
Because I did that 2 years. I did it the smart time. I did it a month before we were put into a shutdown situation with the pandemic, because I got rid of it right before it happened, and we did miss it. The thing that we're dealing with around here, though, and this is what we found out during the pandemic, is that the internet is so spotty that these guys weren't able to do their homeworks. And we have a company called Atlantic Broadband who is doing ours, and it is one of the most unstable setups that you'll see. How many of you guys have Atlantic? Do you know? How many have something else other than Atlantic? What do you have? Verizon. That's DSL. Does anybody have the satellite system? How's that?
It's awful.
It's HughesNet, right? Yeah. So these kids couldn't do homework. They couldn't watch streaming video. They couldn't do it. We found out at that period of time where the infrastructure was lacking because they couldn't do it. Like you said, if you put fiber to everybody's home, just think of what could be accomplished.
Yeah. But it would take away from a lot of the established businesses that are trying to hold on to things. And yeah, I think, not only will the homework be better and easier for you guys, the entertainment getting into your house will be better. You'll be able to do Zooms without having interference. But I do think it would create a lot of local businesses that people could run their own business and keep the expense down and reach a lot of people. So yeah, I'm confident. I think that it's going to happen. It's going to take some time. We just got to work through the kinks, and that's what's going on right now. And there's businesses that are holding on and that are, trying to keep our elected officials from allowing things to happen. And the technology is out there, and the technology is coming, and it's coming at a faster pace, and it's definitely going to come and change things.
So if I remember correctly, you and I have talked so many times in the last few months that I don't remember. We were talking about what's going on with radio and a lot of this stuff going online right now. Do you finally see internet radio going to actually take away from terrestrial radio?
Oh yeah. Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think it's going to be, because everyone's got one of these, and you're going to get everything from here. I mean, I think your newspaper is going to become a newsletter, and it's going to be right here. And there's going to be video clips in there. And your radio, I mean, one of the amazing things, and I know we're technically still in the pandemic, but I'm going to say post-pandemic now, of all the changes, the one thing that has stuck is podcasts. And you're seeing so many people that are doing podcasts that are making really good money off of it. And these are people who are, might be actors, or they might be broadcasters. And they are doing really well. I can look at, a guy like Rich Eisen, who was on ESPN. He left ESPN. He's making a ton more money doing his own podcast now. And there's a number of people that are doing that. So what I'm seeing with the radio, like for instance, I got a sports and entertainment podcast called Daly Fish. And my buddy Fish, he's in Las Vegas, and I'm here in the Myrtle Beach area. And we do it. We talk sports and entertainment. We bring guests on. We're knocking it through the roof. A lot of people are really enjoying the show. And I'm seeing more people that they want that talking. They want to have kind of conversations with everybody, so that you're all kind of together. So I would have thought, that would be kind of like boring, but it's really, people are watching that instead of watching regular TV or terrestrial radio. Radio's problem is that they've got to compete with Facebook for ads. So people aren't going to be putting ads on regular radio. So that's why they're going away. And I think, Bill, we were talking about this too, was that I got an offer from a broadcast group to be the morning news anchor on like 4 or 5 radio stations at the same time in different markets, and that I would have to prepare it. And I was like, why? Well, because they're saving money, because they're going to bring one person in to do 5 different radio stations. Mm-hmm. And it's just easier to do that rather than hiring somebody locally that you got to pay for their benefits, you got to pay for salary and all that. So that's where I think, yeah, I think the podcasting and the online radio is where it's going to happen.
So how many of you guys here listen to podcasts? See, this number has increased in the last few years, because if I would have said this 5 years ago, there may have been one that knew what it was.
But
back when you last asked.
Yeah, I know, because with the pandemic and everything else, we've seen it more. Podcasting's been around. I mean, I started in 2006. And I had my largest audiences for 4 years because I wasn't competing against anybody. There was no one doing it.
Yeah.
And now everybody's doing it. Everybody has a show.
It's true.
I'm making nickels and dimes compared to what I made in 2006. with that, with again, going with that being said, who do you trust when you listen to these things? How do you know you can trust those people?
Well, for me, it's people with what I would call a solid, honest news background.
Okay,
And then also I look for people who, when they talk about an issue, they bring up both sides of the issue. They see both sides of the issue. They see the merits in both sides of the issue. And they see things in both sides of the issue that aren't good. If they're using incendiary, or emotional language, or you can tell they're trying to get you to follow what they're saying, something like that. I've got a problem with that. And so normally I will I listen to it? Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I learned when I wrote my first book, The No BS Guide to Navigating a Media Biased World, I had a lot of people in the intelligence community. I had read the book and they said to me, one of the important things is not only do you have to see both sides, but you got to see both extremes, because you got to know what the extremes are thinking. Not that you're going to buy what they're saying, but you got to know what they're thinking so that you're aware of what might be coming up or what might be talked about. So I look for balance. So when you were saying before, Bill, about I create a Twitter feed and I teach people how to create a Twitter news feed so that the only thing you're going to put on that Twitter feed is news. And so you follow like 3 newspapers on the left, 3 newspapers on the right, 4 in the middle. And they don't have to be newspapers. They could be regular platforms. They could be TV stations. And then you've got 10 of them and you're getting a different perspective, maybe on the same story. So you kind of see it. And I always find that when you see different perspectives and you kind of go, yeah, okay, I kind of get that. Yeah. And I see where they're coming from. It's like that. You usually have a tendency to go, I'm not going to say anything out loud because there's some really interesting things on all sides. So for me to come out and say, that person's an idiot and that person I agree with, it's like, yeah, it's not doing it. Just let it sit. So that's kind of how I do it. I like to have it where, for the most part, I like to be able to see everything and hold everything and then listen to what people are saying. I find it fascinating when I have friends who are on the far right and they start coming out about an issue and really they got kind of a far left perspective, or vice versa. I have friends who are on the left and then they also agree with a lot of people on the right on different things, even though they'll say that they are one side and not the other. And it turns out once you really listen to people, sometimes there's a difference there. And at the same time too, I don't like putting my views on people. I like hearing what other people's views are. And then it's like, okay, that's fine. So I think being able to see more of it and you see and hear more views, you have a tendency to kind of go, yeah, okay, I get that. Keep your mouth shut and okay, I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from, and that's fine. And I think you get more peace and harmony that way.
I don't know
Did I get off topic there?
if I told you this or not, but it was a couple weeks back. I had someone come up to me, and it was a student, and they were going off on something, and I just stood there and I said, "Okay, where'd you get it from?" "I got it from a podcast." I said, "Okay, who is it? Why?" And he's going on and he says, because he has a microphone, he knows what he's talking about. So 10 minutes later, I put 2 pictures up on the screen, pointed at him. I go, and see that guy right there? He goes, yeah. He said, he's sitting behind a microphone and he's an idiot. And they looked at me and said, but wait, it was me. Just because you sit behind a microphone doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Isn't that right, John?
Well, and it is. And I always tell people is that, whoever you're watching on TV, whether you agree with them or not, you should challenge them. You should listen to what they're saying and go like, okay, well, where are you getting that from? Okay, you got to back that up. Or, okay, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but at the same time too, it might not seem right. So I think, and it goes back to what I was saying before, is the most important journalist in your life is you. And
Right.
you need to question everything that you see on television. And I always tell people is that, just because it's a television news person, you got to question them as well, because you don't know if that TV news station, they're being told that you've got to frame the news a certain way because of an advertiser who's paying a lot of money. And it's, you've got to challenge everything without calling them idiots, but
Yeah.
just challenge them, and then be confident in yourself and saying, like, yeah, I see what they're saying and I understand the story, but I think they're missing part of the story here because this affects other people. And that to me is where what I would call real journalism, or being a citizen who really cares about everything and seeing everything, it really has to do. And unfortunately, too many people take one side or the other. Oh yeah, he's right, I'm going to follow him, I don't care what they say over there. It's like, well, no, you've got to see everything. If you're a citizen of whether it's your town or your state or your country, you've got to make sure everybody at least has a say, and that you can weigh it, because it's going to be some people that are going to come up with some stuff and you're going to go, wait a minute, that's been fact checked 200 times, it has no relevance in fact. Okay, you may think it is, so that's fine, but I don't.
So there's an example of what you said about of advertisers. We had a situation in Pittsburgh about 5-10 years ago where a service, a plumbing company, was being sued by quite a few people. They were being investigated by the Attorney General, so on and so forth. One of the local news stations, when they covered the stories, was very light on information because that company was paying for advertising during that newscast. And it was like red flags are going off everywhere and no one's seeing a problem with it, going, we're recreating the news just so we can make money out of the deal. And that happens on more often than not, doesn't it?
I think it happens a lot more now. And I think a lot of that is because, go back to the Facebook thing, because a lot of companies can for a lot cheaper go to Facebook. And so a lot of stations are trying to hold on to their advertisers, and they try to do whatever they can. And unfortunately, that might hurt the news credibility. When I was a managing editor out of a TV station in Las Vegas, I was the main anchor and the managing editor. And the station I was at, we had a car dealership that was really angry with us because we did a story on a type of car that they sold that was stolen more than anything. And so they said, if you don't take that story down, we're going to drop the advertising. And the station was like, okay, bye. Yeah. And so I've seen them do that. And again, that was in the day when, that was in the 1990s when, the economy was booming. There was no competition. It was just the three stations in that market. And it was, we could afford to, because there was going to be another advertiser coming in. It doesn't happen these days. And, TV stations they're having a tough time. You're seeing a lot of the local TV news stations are all, they're not individually owned. They're owned by a big conglomerate somewhere. And there's probably about 4 or 5 conglomerates that own all of them.
Before I let you go, you mentioned in the beginning about shooting programming on your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you go somewhere to do that, and people
say that again.
Okay, when you go to do that and you pull your iPhone out and you're wherever you are, do people look at you strange going, wait, he's just pulling a phone out to get video? It's not going to be, because to me, I mean, I know what the phone can do, but to me, that's a little bit skeptical there.
I would say probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And again, the show I have, Undercover Jet Setters, travel, food, wine, and golf. So we would do a lot of food shots. So we would go to a restaurant. Again, 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a restaurant, we were shooting it, and they would come up and they would say, no, you can't do that. And they were thinking we were going to do a shot of something and then put it on Yelp and say, this place is horrible, don't ever come here. And, I would walk in and I'd say to them, no, hey, listen, we're trying to do an entertainment type thing. And so we're not trying to do bad stuff, and, we won't. And again, we weren't news. Again, we were creating a TV show. So I would say, fast forward about 3 or 4 years after that, if we would come in and we were shooting it, they were like, oh, you want free appetizers? You want free drinks and stuff like that. So it changed dramatically in the fact that people began to realize that this stuff was really being used for, to help companies. So even though we were helping ourselves, we were helping some different companies. So I don't do, no, not anymore. Now, what I'll do, like, for instance, I did a live shot for my podcast the other day, and I was in a bar, and I had to tell the people around me, because I could see on the live screen where I was talking to, that people were behind me. And so I had to say to them, I said, hey, are you okay? I'm going live here. I just want you to know, because there's some people that I don't want to be seen, or maybe they're in a witness protection program or something like that. So I had to say to people, hey, I'm going live here, just so you know, and all that. And if you don't want, you can move out of the way. Or if somebody said, I don't want you going live here at all, then I probably wouldn't do it. So as long as you're notifying people, I think people understand that. And this is so ubiquitous now. I mean, we wrote a book on it. It's called The TV Studio in Your Hand, on how to shoot your vacation videos, how to shoot your own TV show. And it's happening more and more. And you're beginning to see, the new iPhone 13 is really cinematic. So you're beginning to see a lot of movie producers that are using, the iPhone 13 Pro. That's how good it is. So I think people are getting used to that now.
So I've told my earlier class, that the one I have earlier in the day, about shooting their own, programming that, and I get the answer, but no one's going to want to watch it. What is your answer to that when I have a 14 to 18-year-old say, but no one's going to want to watch it?
Well, one, that's not true. Two, to get them to watch it, you've got to learn the art of either being on camera or how to shoot different things. You can't just throw up, hey, here I am on, just stuff like that. And, that can work on TikTok or something like that if you're going to do, 10, 20-second videos. But if you're going to do, you can do like a 2 or 3 minute report on whatever you want to do it on. There are certain ways of making sure you're doing it. It's storytelling. That's another thing that I talk about, is how to tell the story to engage the viewer, make the viewer feel like they're kind of the hero of the story. So, oh, that's really something I want to hear about. Oh, yeah, that's really good. And too many people, when they get on camera first, think it's all about them. Hey, I'm so-and-so, and you can't believe what I do. I'm great. I'm wonderful. And usually people turn off. But when you tell them, hey, I got something to tell you about that, really, it'll change your life. And it's something you do every day. Let me tell you about it. Okay, I'm interested. So there are techniques that you do. And so what I always tell people is that, especially young people that are interested in this, get in front of the camera as much as you can. Test it out. You don't have to publish it because it may not be good, but get it out, have your friends see it, have people who are experts in the field see it, and try it, because people are dying for this stuff. And if you do it right, you can create your own content and have your content be very successful. And again, I would take a look at, take a look at my book, and Bill, you've seen the book before,
Yes.
and it gives you the techniques on how to do this. And it's right at your hands here. You can easily do it.
Well, John, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You talking to my classes today. This was great. And I'm going to do it again sometime after the first of the year, because I think you have a lot of
Cool.
information that you can share. So you
Absolutely.
have a great day. And
I
guys,
appreciate it. Thanks, Bill.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you.